Hello and welcome to This Date in History, aka TDH. This show is all about the events that occurred today in years past, both recognized by actual historians, but mainly things I personally find intriguing enough for me to bring to you. The source of this information comes from the smart device application Today in History on this day. For links to the app, music, and anything else potentially interesting, click the box below. Anyway, on with the show! Today is Wednesday, aka Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. In 1558, Elizabeth I of England succeeded her half-sister, Queen Mary I of England, when Mary died. This began the Elizabethan era, which is often depicted as the Golden Age in English history. In 1777, the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union between the states were submitted to the states for ratification. Due to border disputes between Virginia and Maryland, it would take 4 years until finality could be concluded. Moving on up a few decades, in 1800, having been founded on March 4th, 1789, the United States Congress held session in Washington, D.C. for the first time after having been previously located in Philadelphia and New York. In 1810, the Anglo-Swedish War started when Sweden declared war on their ally, the United Kingdom. Although no fighting ever took place, this happened because they fell to France during the Napoleonic Wars. 1 year later, in 1811, the founding father of Chile, José Miguel Carrera, was sworn in as president of the executive junta of the government of Chile. In 1820, Captain Nathaniel Palmer became the first U.S. citizen to see Antarctica, and later a portion of it would be named after him, the Palmer Peninsula. 38 years later, in 1858, with an area of almost 155 square miles and the capital of Colorado, Denver was founded. In 1869, the Suez Canal, linking the Red Sea with the Mediterranean through Egypt, was inaugurated. Being referred to as a portion of the modern-day Silk Road, this artificial waterway is one of the most important in the world. Going from 1869 to 1896, in that year, later to become the first ice hockey league to openly trade and hire players, the Western Pennsylvania Hockey League began play at Pittsburgh's Schenley Park Casino. Going into the next century, in 1903, the Bolsheviks and Mensheviks, which are Russian for majority and minority respectively, came to be when the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party split to form them. Fun fact, today is International Students' Day in many countries, especially the Czech Republic, when, in 1939, anti-Nazi demonstrations prompted by the death of Jan Opletal led to the executions of 9 Czech students. Following this, 1,200 more native pupils were sent to concentration camps, and every Czech university was shut down. In 1947, later to become a key element for the electronics revolution of the 20th century, U.S. scientists John Bardeen and Walter Hauser Brattain observed the basic principles of the transistor. 3 years later, in 1950, Lahamo Dondrub was officially named the 14th Dalai Lama, and has remained such to this day at the age of 86. His position is one of greatness for millions, and is loosely the East version of the Pope, if every Pope was the reincarnated soul of the one prior. 17 years later, in 1967, while speaking about the conflict in Vietnam, U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson told the nation,
"Overall, we are making progress. We're satisfied with that progress. Our allies are pleased with that progress."
Yeah, we saw how well that worked out, didn't we? The next year, in 1968, changes to sports broadcasting in the United States were prompted when NBC cut off the ending to the Raiders-Jets football game, treating fans to the alternative excitement of Heidi. 1 year after that, in 1969, during the Cold War, the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, aka SALT I negotiations, started, taking place in Helsinki, Finland, involving negotiators from the United States and Soviet Union, calling for a limitation of the number of strategic weapons on both sides. Moving 1 more year, how many times are we going to do this? In 1970, during the Soviet Union's Luna program, Luna Cold 1 landed on Mare Imbrium, aka the Sea of Rains, on the Moon. Becoming the first roving remote-controlled robot to set wheel on foreign space, this great feat could not have been possible without its platform, the Luna 17 spacecraft. In 1973, speaking to 400 Associated Press managing editors in Orlando, Florida,
and I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes, but in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
President?
Yes,
in 1986, Japan Airlines Flight 1628, a cargo transport from Paris to Narita International Airport near Tokyo, sighted a UFO while flying over Alaska. 3 years later, in 1989, eventually to succeed on December 29th, the Velvet Revolution began in Czechoslovakia. The uprising was caused after riot police quelled a student demonstration in Prague, becoming the beginning to the end of their communist government during the Cold War. In 1993, the North American Free Trade Agreement, aka NAFTA, came to be, with their resolution passing within the United States House of Representatives. This created a free trade zone between the US, Canada, and Mexico upon implementation the following year. 4 years later, in 1997, the Luxor massacre occurred, in which 6 Islamic militants murdered 62 people outside of the Temple of Hatshepsut in Egypt. Speaking of Egypt, just a few years later, in 2012, a railway accident at a crossing near Manfalt caused the deaths of at least 50 school children. And in 2013, the Midwest United States was witness to a rare late-season tornado outbreak when, over an 11-hour period, around 72 tornadoes hit, 7 of which were EF3s and 2 were EF4s. Births: Vespasian, 9. Nicholas Appert, 1749. August Ferdinand Mobius, 1790. Bernard Montgomery, 1887. Lester Allen, 1891. Walter Hallstein, 1901. Soshio Honda, 1906. Martin Scorsese, 1942. Danny DeVito, 1944. Lauren Michaels, 1944. Howard Dean, yeah! 1948. Doug Walker, 1981. Deaths: John Walter, 1812. And that concludes the show. Once again, check the underbar for any links you may be interested in. For your dose of past events daily, I am Aozander, and you are you. Toodles!